Welcome to a new episode of the Holistic Selling Podcast. I'm very pleased to have Neha Gupta join me today. Neha is the founder and CEO of Breakthrough.ai, a communication intelligence platform where she helps organizations develop the human capabilities needed to thrive alongside artificial intelligence. Neha specializes in AI leadership, executive coaching, corporate training, negotiation, and public speaking, with a strong emphasis on preparing leaders and teams for AI-driven transformation. Her work focuses on helping organizations combine human intelligence with AI to improve decision-making, adaptability, innovation, and business performance. Neha is recognized as a thought leader at the intersection of leadership development, organizational transformation, and artificial intelligence, advocating that sustainable AI success begins with strengthening human capabilities. So Neha, welcome to the show. Please take a minute to further introduce yourself.
Thank you, Bernard. I'm very excited about this topic. I could talk about it all day, so I'm really excited to have a conversation with you about it. So my background has varied in a lot of different industries and sectors. I come from a packaged goods background and saw sales at that level, but I also have worked with smaller businesses and companies and have seen sales at that level too. And I have seen like a common thread going through them around the fact that when you're new to this world, it's very hard to ramp up and get those skills that you really need in order to sell well. Some people might be born charming and being able to be talkative and those things that we think a good salesperson is, but I really think most of us actually have skills that we need to build. And that's basically this through line that I've seen through various different size organizations and companies. And that's what our platform is trying to address, is that instead of it taking you years to ramp up and hope you get into different situations so you know how to handle them in the future, let's just give people that chance to practice that right up front so that you know as a leader that they're ready and the person themselves also feels more confident as they go into those sales conversations.
It makes a lot of sense. Neha, we are both very passionate about improving the productivity and effectiveness of a company's customer-facing team members. The holistic selling purpose is to coach CEOs and leadership teams to align their entire organization from culture to strategies, tactics, and operational processes, and enable their customer-facing teams to deliver extraordinary experiences and outcomes to customers and prospects at every touch point. The approach you have taken with Breakthrough.ai is very aligned with the holistic selling purpose, which is why I'm very excited to have this conversation with you today. So let me ask you a first question. Why did you start Breakthrough.ai? What is the problem that you were targeting to solve? How did you discover that problem, and why is that important to you?
Yeah, so as I had started mentioning, when I first started out in corporate world, I also struggled with how do you actually speak in corporate speak? It's not the same as obviously what you might do in college or in university with your friends, family. It's a very different way of speaking the professional sort of workplace communication. And I personally struggled with that in the beginning. I don't come from a corporate background. My family wasn't corporate, so I didn't really pick up those things by just watching my parents. I didn't find that in school and even in business school that they really focus on the actual words. What do you actually say to people in specific situations? It was sort of more at a framework type of level, which is what I think training tends to be. It tends to be at a framework, tips, very high level, is more content driven. And I was realizing as I'd kind of progressed through my career, and I would see others who are also coming into their careers and also struggling. And then there's careers, even though they were smart, intelligent, very capable people, technically great, they struggled on how to manage a client, exactly like the best way to push back, but still retain the relationship, how to handle objections. And I would hear from their managers that they struggled with knowing exactly the best way to coach them. They didn't want to be in every single meeting with them, but then at the same time, someone needs something very specific in their feedback to actually improve. And so I found that when AI actually started coming up, there was this perfect moment now where AI is smart enough basically to not only deliver this role play, and we've been fine tuning our product for over 12 months to make sure that those role plays are very realistic, unlike using regular LLMs off the shelf where they're designed to be softer and they're designed to be your friend ultimately. So they're not going to be pushing back the way maybe a frustrated customer might be. But because AI can do that and then also look for very specific micro behaviors, words, it's sort of like this perfect moment where now you can really get the coaching that has just never been available before. And so that's why I really wanted to start it, because I saw that there was this gap in the way training has happened so far. And of course, role play has existed forever. Everyone has done role play at some point, but it's very awkward doing it with a coworker. There's almost so much pushback you're going to do. There's only so much creativity you can expect. And probably most importantly is that the leadership doesn't really know what you've actually practiced. One of our clients, they said, we've assigned people to find time and go do role play, but then we would have no idea whether someone actually did it, the quality of that role play. Did they actually do the role play or talk about the role play? So this is like a system around role play rather than just one person doing it, some people not, no one really knowing and having no data behind it.
Right. I like the position of Breakthrough AI as a communication intelligence platform designed to help organizations improve the communication skills of client-facing employees through AI-powered practice, coaching, and measurement. So tell me more about this notion of improving the communication skills of customer-facing team members. What does that mean in practice? What communication skills are you focusing on improving for your customers?
Yeah, so what we have done is we've looked through many scientific studies to really figure out what actually makes someone an effective communicator. So we're looking at things like how much are you speaking with clarity and structure? So are you signposting, for example, as a micro behavior? Are you doing like the bottom line up front? Are you making sure you're leading with the headline before you get into details? But also things like, how do you handle pushback? Are you bringing in empathy in there so that the person feels really heard, not just sort of glossing over their concerns? What we do basically is that you come in, you'll do a role play. There's lots of different scenarios. Some are going to feel easier. Some are going to feel much harder because of the context and also because of the persona that you're working with. And while you're doing this, there's the AI feedback agent that's basically watching and listening to everything that you're saying and picking up, are you able to actually speak with clarity? Do you have executive presence? Is there momentum in the end of the call? Are you ending with some next steps? Are you managing pushback with empathy? Are you speaking professionally, clearly? And it's looking for all of these micro behaviors. And then at the end, you basically get feedback pretty quickly within a few seconds. And it'll give you a scoring, but it'll also give you, hey, here's what you did well. And here's what you could try to say next time to improve a little bit more. So it's also giving you a little bit of scripting back because you don't know what to say if you've never done this before. The reason we call it a communications intelligence platform is actually my favorite part about the platform, because there's all this stuff around role play that you do in person, or you might try to use an off-the-shelf LLM to do some role play yourself. But the problem behind all of that is that your leadership, your management have no idea actually how you performed on that. So even if you were to do it in person and give someone a rubric and have them actually look through how you performed and give you some scoring, that's very subjective. So one manager might give someone one score, another manager might give that same exact role play a different score. By having AI in there as the feedback agent and the scoring agent, we're now taking that subjectivity out there. So now you don't have to worry about, do we make sure that all the managers are giving similar scoring? Are we calibrating across managers? The product itself is doing that because it's being very objective and it's looking for all of the very specific micro behaviors that we fed it in order to give that specific score. And so now a manager or a leader could look across a team and for the first time can actually see how is one person doing on the same type of role play as another person. And it allows them to now see like whether one person needs very specific support, where exactly things are breaking down. They can pinpoint that. So when they go into coach, they have an example. They know exactly what to coach on. But also then if they want to staff something and they want to figure out like, there's a bigger deal coming up and we want to be able to put some of our better enterprise salespeople, they now have data that actually backs that up rather than using only intuition and observation. And so that's the biggest change that can happen by using an AI platform versus just using human role play with each other is now you're actually getting the data to back up any of those sort of decisions around communication skills, sales skills, those type of things that you couldn't ever do before.
So it's interesting, the notion of effective communication. Is it correct to say that you're measuring both the structure of the communication as well as the behavior of the communication, the tone, etc.? Are you measuring all of those components in the way that salespeople communicate with customers?
Yeah, it is a little bit more text driven in the sense that what's happening is you're doing the role play. There's obviously a realistic role play partner. What we're doing is then transcribing your role play. And what we've given to the feedback agent and the scoring agent is looking for very specific sort of phrasing that it connotes that there is empathy being shown, that you're actively listening, that you're making sure that you're ending with some sort of real alignment on what's the next step. So we're really very much looking more for, are you saying the words that actually convey exactly that sort of message that you're trying to? We're trying to bring in now, like as the technology changes and improves, getting much more specific on tone. So not just positive and negative sort of sentiment, because as we all know, the same sentence spoken with different tones can have a different meaning. So that's what we're trying to bring in now. What we're looking for right now is when someone asks a question, are you understanding the intent behind it and being able to repeat that back? So are you just saying all of those right words? And then putting them against a rubric. So now you know, okay, these are all the micro behaviors that lead to speaking with clarity. These are all the micro behaviors that lead to being good at managing pushback. These are the right behaviors that lead to next step alignment or influence momentum, that type of thing. So we're just trying to break it down so it becomes much more transparent than it ever has in the past. Where in the past, I know they're a good communicator, but I can't really tell you why. It was just like a feeling or an intuition. And now we're really trying to put some data behind it.
So is Breakthrough.ai leveraged by your customers in the context of role plays and also in the context of actual customer conversations? Can you take us through the user experience and how Breakthrough AI is actually being used by your customers?
Yeah, so currently it's mainly being used before that they might go into client or customer situation. So the most usage has been, let's say someone is normally a customer service rep or a client account manager type. So they're used to agreeing with the customer, trying to deliver everything they possibly can, giving really good customer service, that type of thing. But what the leadership really wants is for them to also be able to do some sales. So for them to find these opportunities to do upselling, to expand the relationship, to look for more opportunities and to be able to lead that type of conversation. Or if there are some objections and that might come up around that, how do you manage those objections? So if someone says, well, I need to think about it or I have to talk to someone, how do you manage that type of thing and make sure that there's some momentum going and that it doesn't just stop there? So that's really where our team, our platform has been really helpful because those people don't necessarily encounter those situations often enough to be good at it very quickly. And so we're giving them the space to actually get good at it very rapidly. So then now when they're in that situation, they can identify it. They can see that there's an upselling opportunity. They can see that there's a room for expansion. And then now they know exactly how to start leading that conversation and exactly what to do in order to make sure that there's a next step afterwards. And so that's been like, I would say the main use case that we're seeing. The other one that we're starting to see is around becoming a new manager. So not related to sales per se, but just becoming a new manager and having these difficult conversations for the first time. Again, there's only so many times you put someone on a PIP or have to have an underperformance conversation. You want a new manager to try to handle that as well as possible. So before waiting years for them to ramp up, now you can run them through these role plays and so that they get that experience of a defensive employee or an anxious one or one facing burnout or something like that. And how do you best handle that situation? And then we do have now the ability to upload a transcript and get feedback on that. So let's say now you've done this practice and you're like, oh, okay, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling confident about this. And a situation comes up where you did have that price objection come up, difficult conversation, etc. You can now take the transcript and upload it. And against the same feedback rubric, you can get feedback to see like, okay, I've actually improved. And more importantly, your manager can also see like now you are not just practicing it, you're actually able to use that muscle memory and perform or execute on those communication skills in a real life situation. So it's a little bit of both. It is focused on practice, but as proof that the practice is really stuck and you're doing a great job, you can also upload transcripts now to double check that everything is working the way you want it to. And if you find something that you didn't do so well, now you can actually practice that again. So it's an ongoing thing where you try to do some things that you're not so great at, or you know that you may be weaker at, then you can see, did I actually improve? And then if you haven't, you can go back and try to do it again and sort of figure out where you kind of didn't do as well as you would have liked. So it's a little bit of kind of going back and forth. And the reason we have that is because we did test people getting feedback during the call to try to not have this sort of like back and forth that has to happen. But we found that there was just like way too much cognitive load for a person to have to both really listen to the customer, because that's what we want them to do, is be listening to the customer, listening to whoever's speaking, then think about what they should say next. And at the same time, be looking at feedback that's not static, that's constantly changing and giving them input on what to say next. It was just like too much for a person to try to manage all of those pieces. So when we tested that, we realized this is going to be too hard for someone to actually improve this way. We should actually get them to do some deliberate practice first and then see if it's sticking, but not try to do that all at the exact same time.
I think you're right. Monitoring the call as the call is actually being delivered and paying attention to coaching while you're listening to the customer is definitely a case of cognitive overload. So I appreciate your approach there. Could you take us through a few examples of the scenarios that Breakthrough.ai has made available to its customers to train customer-facing team members?
Yes, I'm going to show a demo real quick. We have a catalog of about 10 scenarios per role. So if you're in a pure sales role, we have 10 different scenarios there that a customer could come and then pick that sales track. If they have something else they want, we can customize a scenario for them. But we configure those scenarios so that it's reflecting your company, your product, language that you would use, all of those type of things, so that it feels, again, as realistic as possible, because we find that if it doesn't feel realistic, then the person's brain kind of picks up on that, and then they're not really investing in the practice as much as we'd like them to, for the person to actually build that muscle memory. So that's why we really want to make sure that we aren't just giving someone totally off the shelf, unrealistic scenarios, but how close to real life it can be. So let me share my screen. So what you would come into is you would see your dashboard. You would be able to see all of the different role plays that have been assigned to you. And we're changing this up a little bit where you can see you've got levels 1 here, you have a level 2 here. We're changing this so that all of the levels are grouped together. So you could go through managing scope creep and setting boundaries 1. And then once you finish that, do 2, 3, 4. And everything's out of 5 points. So your goal is to get at least a 4. And then if you've gotten at least a 4, we say that you've mastered that. Of course, you can keep trying to go and get 4.5, 4.6, etc. But we're really looking for a 4 and above, because it's pretty tough to get a 4 and above. So the client is just asking for another round of revisions. We built this for a packaging design agency. That's why you're seeing round of revisions. So it's about creative work that they do for the customer, and that person that they're speaking to is going to want to have another round of revisions without paying for it. So let's try that out so you can see what that sounds like. So first, what's going to come up is a little bit of about the framework and the mindset that you should shift to. Because what we found is that you could practice, but if you're not thinking about this differently, a lot of this isn't going to stick. So that's another thing that we do offer here, is that we put in a framework for someone who's never done this before, especially how do they want to handle this? So for example, for handling scope creep, you want to watch for those red flags of when there is some scope creep happening, because sometimes it's hard to even notice. You want to acknowledge the request. You want to actually know and say and understand what they're actually asking. So take the time to do that. You want to determine if it's in or out of scope, whether the agreement actually allows for a little bit more revisions or not. You can articulate the impact, which is really important, not just saying yes or no, but why you're saying yes or no. And then you're recommending the path forward. So having a clear recommendation. So I'll do this one, and then there's also a price objection one that we can do next. So I'll show you both of those just so you can get a flavor for the different types.
Hi there. How's everything going on your side today? I was hoping we could chat for just a minute about a couple of small updates to the packaging design. It's nothing too major, just a few quick tweaks.
Okay, so just a couple of tweaks. What did you have in mind?
Sure, it's really just a couple of small things. I'm thinking we could adjust the logo placement slightly and maybe shift the color on that back panel. I really think it's something you all can turn around pretty quickly, and it shouldn't be a big lift.
Okay, so it sounds like you want to adjust the logo and then shift the color on that back panel. What were you thinking about in terms of the color? What did you have in mind?
I'm thinking just a slight adjustment to a more vibrant shade, something that pops a little more. We're not looking to overhaul the entire design, just a quick tweak to make it stand out on the shelf. I imagine it's something your team could knock out quickly, right?
So I'm looking at our scope, and it does look like we're out of revisions and the team has moved on to the next part of the project. I'm afraid that if we pull somebody off, it's going to start impacting the other deadlines that we're trying to hit. So I'm happy to do this, and it doesn't sound like a big lift, but we do have to document everything for our finance team. And so I'm going to need to put in a change order around this, but it shouldn't take very long. I can get that over to you in the next half hour.
Look, I see where you're coming from, but this really feels like such a minor tweak. Do we really need a full change order for this? I was hoping we could just slip it in without slowing down the whole process.
Yeah, I completely understand. It does feel like a minor tweak, but I do have to put in a change order. It's just the process that we follow. We need to have everything documented just in case this leads to additional work or questions on why those changes were made. We do need to put everything in writing. So, but it won't take very long. I can get that change order over to you fairly quickly.
I get the documentation part, but I really need this done soon. We're on a tight timeline here. Isn't there any way to push this through quickly without making it a whole formal thing? I'm counting on your flexibility here.
Yeah, it's not a whole formal thing. I'll just send you a quick email documenting what we talked about. And then I just need you to respond back to that email saying that you approve this. That way we have everything in writing. And as soon as you do that, we can get somebody to start working on this. So that will take us maybe a half hour to get you that email. As soon as you hit reply and say, yes, you approve, we'll move forward. And I don't think that should take too long.
All right, that sounds a bit more reasonable. I'll watch for that email and get back to you quickly so we can keep things moving.
Okay, so I'll stop here so you can see what the feedback looks like. So now it's going to be analyzing that session. Like I said, we're transcribing everything you said. We're looking for all of the micro behaviors, and then we're going to see what score I get. Let's see how well I did. But as you can see, she's not like letting go. She's going to be pushing back until you start communicating in an effective way. If you don't communicate effectively, like acknowledging her request, if you're not showing that empathy, if you're not getting to quick next step alignment, then she's going to keep pushing back. And that's really where the fine tuning has come in, because if you're not doing a really good job, you're going to get the client to be even more and more frustrated, and eventually they might just basically walk away. And we're really trying to make sure that people are retaining those clients and yet still being able to push back. So, for example, here, I did fairly well. We were able to get to a resolution of getting a quick email over, and she agreeing to that because I was able to communicate effectively. It is telling me to make my responses a little bit more concise and structured. When I reinforce boundaries, sometimes my answers became repetitive. So that's good for me to think about. I do think I tend to be a little verbose. Why it matters, because when I do tighter phrasing, it can help clients feel guided and reassured more quickly. And so that's something for me to think about. It's not just telling me what I should work on, but why that actually makes a difference. And then we're going to have this breakdown down here where you can see, okay, I got 5 out of 5 there. So maybe I won't look at that, but let's look at this assertiveness and boundary setting. And it said I set this respectful boundary, it gave me an example of how I did it well. But it said next time, in order to get this to 5, I could say something like, to protect the current timeline, keep everything documented correctly, we'll need a quick change approval before work begins. So it's a little less defensive sounding and a little bit more professional. And so it's giving me that wording. So I'll stop this one, and then I can show you real quickly the one around price. Yeah.
What I heard you say also is that the response from that AI system changes depending on what it is that you're communicating. So it's not a one size fits all. For example, if you pushing back too aggressively, then the AI will adjust and make the customer sound more irritated. Is that what I heard you say?
Exactly. So that's the magic of sort of having AI drive this, is that, let's say I had said just absolutely no, we definitely can't do that. And I've done that. So you can see I can get it to be pretty angry, actually. Then she's going to get more and more frustrated and upset sounding because I'm not managing the expectations around revisions very well and not addressing the real intent behind this. Was that she's in a rush. Like, she wants this done quickly. She probably has pressure of her own from her boss or management saying that we need to get these changes done. And so she's now conveying that without saying that exactly, but she is saying, can we get this done quickly? So by addressing, hey, I see that you want to get this done quickly. Let's find a resolution that works for you. Things like that is what helps her feel more calm. And so you'll see in the role play that she'll actually feel calmer and sound like she's now getting to a place of being willing to agree with you. So like in this situation that we do, let me do one where I am just like, this person is going to ask for a budget reduction. This is for the packaging design agency. So it's a proposal. And they've looked through the proposal, but they're going to ask for a budget cut. And I will push back in a less professional way, and let's see what they do. But that's the point, is that if you're not communicating well, it's going to respond to you that way. And it's going to become more and more agitated. So, hi there. How's everything going?
Hey, things are going well. Thanks for asking. I had a look at your proposal, and overall, I really like what I see. The approach looks solid, and I think it could be a great fit for us. But I do have to say, there's one thing on my mind. The overall price just feels a bit high. I'm not exactly sure where to pinpoint it, but I'd love to chat through it and see if there's any room to get that number down.
I'm sorry, we're just not going to really be able to budge on price because this is the scope of the work in order to really meet your needs. And so, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to budge on the price at all.
I hear you, but I'm not quite sure that works for us. I mean, the total cost is still feeling a bit high for our budget. Is there any flexibility in the scope or phasing? Maybe we can look at some alternatives to bring it closer to what we need.
There really isn't much flexibility in the scope or phasing. I wish there was, but if you had wanted to change any of that, then we would have had to have talked about that sooner so that we could change all of that. But right now, given like what you want to achieve, we really need to stick to this scope and phasing. If you'd like to change what you want to actually achieve, then we can talk.
I get what you're saying, but I've got to be honest. It's still feeling like we're not quite aligned on the cost. We've got a real budget constraint here. Are there any creative solutions you can offer? Maybe a small adjustment, shifting a timeline, or rethinking a part of the package? Because I really want to make this work, but I need the total number to come down.
I mean, I guess we could probably do a small adjustment, maybe knock off a few $100s, but I don't think we'd be able to do much more than that.
Okay, a small adjustment could be a start, but I was hoping for a bit more movement. I mean, we might need to find a middle ground here. What if we took a closer look at one or two elements? Maybe there's a piece we could phase out for later, or simplify in the short term. I'm just trying to understand. If we can't adjust the scope, is there any other way to get this total number to a place where we're both comfortable?
Okay, I'm going to stop here. But you can see he's actually trying to give you suggestions on how you should be handling this conversation by saying, like, can you look at the scope or phasing? While a real customer probably wouldn't necessarily say that, he's looking for you to try to bring up some of these creative solutions and talk about that. So you can see I obviously didn't do very well here. But I'm just sticking to my guns and being like, we really can't change things. This is the scope. This is what we came up with. This is where the pricing is. This is where we've landed. Obviously, I was very assertive and I set my boundaries strongly, but I had very little empathy. I definitely didn't manage pushback. Obviously, we ended the call play before we got to next step alignment. But the role play is trying to also help you understand the ways that you could actually negotiate with someone on price and a price objection. You could look at scope. You could look at phasing. You could look at finding some other creative solution. And it's pushing someone to really think on their feet, which is not something that you normally get to learn somewhere. You just learn that by doing this. It's really only a thing you can get by practicing again and again. And so you could see that he was trying his best, getting a little bit more agitated, sticking to, we really need this price reduction, not giving in and saying, fine, we'll talk about it. But eventually, if you're not continuing to communicate effectively, it will just say, okay, well, I guess we can't work together. It will get to that point where we just have to go different ways. It's not going to get to the point where it's going to say, okay, that's fine. No problem. I'll just take whatever you can give me and we'll sign the contract anyways. That's what off the shelf LLMs will do. It'll eventually be like, no problem. I see where you're coming from. Okay, the contract is fine. We'll just pay that price. This is not going to do that.
Right. The notion, again, of effective communication is very interesting because effective communication may mean something different at the various stages in the sales cycle. So if I set that back in the context of SaaS B2B sales skills. As we know, there's multiple phases in the sales cycle. The first one is engaging with the customer, getting the customer to commit to having a conversation with you, making sure you win the hearts and minds of the customers on the front end. Mm-hmm. The middle part is really about differentiation. Make sure your offer is differentiated from the competition so you can win the evaluation. And the third phase is really the closing phase, the negotiation phase in terms of pricing and proposal and timeline and scope and so on and so forth. But the skill set you have on the front end, the middle part, and the back end of a sales cycle are different skills from a communication perspective.
There are different scenarios where there is like initial calls where it's more of a discovery style call and you're not at a negotiation point and you're practicing discovery style questions, really getting to know the customer, understand their pain points, their needs. That's a very different scenario. Obviously, we're still looking for you to speak clearly. We're still looking for empathy and professionalism. But what we're looking for there is the things more like, are you asking good discovery style questions? Are you listening more instead of talking more? We're going to be looking at different things because of that type of call needs different things. So that rubric that's in there, that's a standard rubric, but we do adjust it depending on the style of call that's needed. So for a new manager, we're not going to be looking at all of these specific things. We're going to also add in some things that are very specific to what a new manager would need. Back to what you were asking, discovery style calls versus negotiation, we're going to be looking at slightly different things. So there are some core elements of the rubric around being just an effective communicator. And then there's some specific ones that are related to that particular scenario.
Yeah, and obviously over time, as you get engaged with more and more customers, do you see the potential to build more and more scenarios within Breakthrough.ai that would enable those multiple, if you will, communication instances where as a salesperson or an account manager or CSM, you need to be able to practice different communication skills depending on where you are in that particular sales cycle.
That's right. Exactly. So you want someone to be able to adjust and be flexible and know this is the type of call that I'm walking into. So now I need to adjust my communication style. And how are you listening more? What type of empathy or professionalism are you showing? You want them to be able to flex on all of those things. We're all watching the World Cup these days. So it's like you're on a soccer pitch. You're trying to adjust whether the ball is close to your goal or close to your opponent's goal. You can't do the exact same thing every time. And it's only by practicing those various different drills that when in the moment of the game, you actually can execute on what you've just practiced over and over again. And that's really what we're trying to do here. It's very similar in that, like, if you've now practiced a discovery style call with lots of different personas, like a skeptical buyer, one that's enthusiastic, one that doesn't have any time for you. Now, when you have a discovery call with that type of buyer, you have your muscle memory kicking in, and it doesn't have to be so, oh my God, what should I say? What should I say next? You messing up. Now, like, you've missed the opportunity to move them to the next phase. Everything feels like I've seen this before and I know what to do now in this situation. And that's really our goal, is because human communication is hard. And so we want people to just be able to practice that. So then they feel confident, they feel comfortable, their brains are like calm, and they can really activate that good communication at that time.
So where has Breakthrough.ai been most successful to date in terms of industry segments, ideal customer profile, size of company? Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, we're doing the strongest will a small, middle-sized company. So the larger companies that have like a large L&D team or a huge sales team, they often have internal trainers that are running these type of things, so that they're already having someone in-house who's like doing a lot of this. What we're doing best with is a company that might be 500 to 3,000 people, where they have enough people coming in and out, enough churn happening that it's becoming burdensome to have to train every single person every single time. And also the teams are getting a little bit bigger. We're trying to pinpoint exactly where they're doing poorly and what's actually breaking down in the call is becoming like a lot of work for the manager. And so then having this communications intelligence come in with a specific team, could be the sales team, it could be new managers, like I was saying, but then basically make sure that everyone's trained the same way. Everyone is doing well. We're seeing improvement. We have the data on there. And then if a manager does need to coach, they know exactly where to go. That's sort of our sweet spot, I would say. So not so small where they might be doing stuff more one-on-one and they just don't have as huge of a need for a lot of training, and not so big where maybe they're building a lot of this in-house.
Any particular industry segment where you have been more successful getting the technology adopted?
Yeah, we're focusing on agencies and consulting firms where they're doing a lot of this expansion type of conversation because it's project-based work. So it's not in recurring revenue where they have to sell a project and then try to sell another one and another one. So this is where I was saying you have somebody who's having to do mainly client management, but you also need them to do sort of those beginning stages of sales work and then get them to a salesperson who might close it. So we're definitely doing really well there. The other place that we are focusing on is on financial services. So insurance, especially, there is a lot of sales work around insurance, both supporting external salespeople, but also internally on call centers, that type of thing. So it tends to be a product that also people have a lot of questions about, are not sure about, trying to understand. And so that practice of not only being able to manage your communication, but do a good job of actually answering all of the specific features and benefits of that product, then this product also becomes really helpful at Breakthrough AI, because now you're getting to practice and know that they have the product knowledge that you need that salesperson to have, which is also really important, because that's the other thing the salesperson is doing, is just answering questions on, can your product do this or not? What features does it have? And you want someone to be able to not just read about the product, but practice answering questions about it.
Right. Have you seen your customers giving their salespeople the flexibility to test themselves on those role plays by themselves, or have they organized this in a formal certification process, organized in a group setting?
We mainly have seen our customers offering this to the whole team. So it has been less about like just one person needing to improve their specific skills, and more like we know that the whole team could probably improve somewhere or the other. Just different people have different places that they want to improve. Some are more enthusiastic than others, but really wanting to offer this training opportunity to everybody. So it has been not necessarily that people are doing it as a group. Obviously, they're doing it on their own time, seeing how they improve themselves, but it is usually being delivered as more of a training program as access to everyone. We've seen someone who has been in client management for 30 years, who she had told us that scope creep has always been something that she's had a hard time managing, because she's always used to saying, yes to everything? And how do you push back in a way that allows there to be a change order where everyone feels good about the resolution and retaining that client, but that she's not just giving margin away? So she said it's never been something that's been that easy for her. By being able to practice it, seeing the framework about how to actually make the person feel heard, see the intent, but then come to resolution where we're not giving away scope, she says even 30 years later, this has been really helpful for her. So I find that while initially we were thinking it's going to be people who are brand new to sales or brand new to client-facing work, even those who are veterans are learning something about themselves that they can then finesse and become even better.
This is great. Do you have any examples of the business outcomes you've been able to improve with your customers?
Yeah, we're a little bit early to be able to see the quantitative percentage increase in number of projects won, that type of thing. But I am hearing anecdotally from the companies that we've been working with that they are seeing, for example, this one insurance company, she is seeing that the person who has been doing a lot of the role play, he's closing leads more. They're still measuring exactly how much because we're still doing some more practice with them. But she says it's been an uptick enough that she's noticing it. Another person who's the director of sales at the packaging design agency, she said there are definitely more expansion opportunities that are starting to come towards her, where she's actually seeing people recognize that there's an opportunity here to ask some questions about expansion and then bring those opportunities to her as the director of sales. So again, anecdotally, they haven't really measured it exactly, but I will be following up with them, of course, in the future to see if we can actually quantify this.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that each use case of effective communication will have different measurements, different impact on the value created, depending again whether you're going after a sales situation, a customer success management situation, an account management situation, early or late in the life cycle of a customer, will deliver different kinds of improvements. So each use case of effective communication will have a different impact in terms of the business outcome you can drive. So it's also, I believe, important to attach a very specific type of measurement to each use case based on how it's being deployed by your customers, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I will say that we are seeing that we did measure is how anxious people are feeling. All of our customers, interestingly, wanted to see and measure how there's a lot of anxiety, especially in the world today, but how anxious are people feeling about this situation before they practice and after, and we've been able to see a 40% drop in anxiety around this. So at least on a personal level, we are seeing a huge impact in someone just feeling more confident and better prepared for those type of situations so that they're feeling better about the potential of having to deliver that type of communication. So for our customers, that's certainly something that they wanted to measure and make sure that there was an impact on how someone was feeling themselves about those type of conversations.
Yeah, one of the benefits of your technology, I believe, is that I've done role plays for years with my sales teams. Nobody really liked doing a role play in front of their peers. With your technology, you can basically do that on your own and not be subjected to other eyes looking at how you perform that particular use case. You can do it on your own, and then you can get the result of how effective your communication was, and you can learn by way of repeating that particular use case until you master the effectiveness of your communication. I think that's a really good outcome of the technology that you're promoting.
Yeah, and the other thing is that for your manager, we're actually only sharing your best score, because what we find is that the first couple of times you do this role play with an AI role play partner, it's a little bit awkward. It's a little bit strange to be talking to the computer and trying to figure out, but then eventually you emotionally get very involved and you get really sucked into what's happening in front of you. So we want to give people that safe space. We're looking for what's your best, most effective communication that you've been able to do. And that's also purposely built that way so that you can feel like this is a place where you can really say whatever you want and try out different things.
But this is great. To bring it up to a wrap today, now I really like what you've done with Breakthrough AI, essentially improving the communication effectiveness of frontline team members in the enterprise to be able to capture the hearts and minds of customers at every touch point. This is something we share between Breakthrough AI, Holistic Selling. Both of us want to make sure we can improve the ability of the frontline salespeople to capture the hearts and minds of the customers and prospects at every touch point. So the technology you've put together can help people train themselves by way of those use cases and those scenarios to improve the quality and the effectiveness of their communication so that they can more routinely and effectively win the hearts and minds of their audience at every touch point. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. To close the call today, do you have any call to action for the audience? Anything that comes to mind in terms of a leave behind you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I would say the most interesting thing that we have found in all of this, looking through effective communications, really trying to understand what makes someone an effective communicator, is really, we call it empathy, but it is that ability to really recognize the other person and hear what they're really trying to say and the intent behind it. That goes much further than people, I think, realize. And so that's why we're really trying to infuse that into the product and make sure that we're really listening to our customers and building exactly what they need, but also then trying to teach people the importance of really listening to the other person. And I think that's where the winning of hearts and minds actually happens, is when somebody feels really seen and heard and their problems really understood. And I really hope that by using this product, more and more people can really demonstrate that empathy for each other.
I could not have said it any better. Thank you, Neha, for your call to action. I very much look forward to looking at the success that Breakthrough AI is going to have in the marketplace going forward. So thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.